Draft Mechanic is a proud member of Punchboard Media. Pull up a chair at punchboardmedia.com. Draft Mechanic, episode 108.
On this episode of Draft Mechanic, we discuss recent plays of Blokus Puzzle, Moonbase, Wobble King, and Dragon's Breath, which we're putting on tap. We have a 6-pack review of Imhotep The Duel, and in preparation for our upcoming series about different hop varietals, we talk about hop propagation. So sit back, relax, grab a pint, and enjoy the show.
You've seen the future and it works to take a mile. The bit all is for the best in the best of our world.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Draft Mechanic. I'm Jake.
And I'm Danielle.
And Draft Mechanic is the podcast about board games and craft beer and anything we can do to tie the two together.
Here at Draft Mechanic, we like our beer like we like our board games.
Better late than never?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll take a beer late.
Yeah, and no, this really is more of just a personal thing. Hey, we're sorry we had to take that 1 week delay, but that's how life goes sometimes. I've been traveling way too much, and it kind of messed with the schedule. But, you know, here we are. After Gen Con, we've got games to talk about. I'm so excited. Are you excited?
I'm excited.
The cat is not excited, but
he's bathing.
He's taking a nap. But hey, if this is your first episode of Draft Mechanic, thank you so much for joining us today. You can find us online at the internet, draftmechanic.net, or at Draft Mechanic on all your favorite or least favorite social media services, as long as that's Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Really just those three.
Well, we also have a Board Game Geek Guild. That is guild number 2470. There will be a thread up for this episode as there is for every episode. So if we're talking about something and you have an opinion you'd like to share with the group, that is the place to do it.
A few other things that I always forget to mention. We are a member of Punchboard Media, the media content creation network about board games, tabletop games, and all that good stuff, where we all bring something to the table. You can find all of our different content creators at punchboardmedia.com, and I feel like you should all go there and go check out Punchboard Media and all the other great persons we have in the network. It's great.
It's certainly a great place to get a second opinion on stuff we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
We also have Charlotte Game Nights. If you are in the Charlotte area and you'd like to come out and play some games and possibly drink some beverages with us, we will be having our next one on Thursday, September 5th. It is the first Thursday of every month at Good Road Cider Works, and we have one on the third Tuesday of every month at Salud Cerveceria. So that will be coming up later in the month, but September 5th is the next one.
The only show news that I have for everybody today is I'm pretty sure at some point during this recording, the live studio cat is going to roll over onto my microphone stand. So if you hear that, that's what happened.
I think it'll be okay.
Oh, in other news, other stuff going on. Essen is coming, and I finally lost track of the BGG Geek Preview. There are 163 items that I have not sorted, but it doesn't really matter because we're not going to Essen. I just really like looking at those geek previews. It's such an easy way to look at everything that's coming out.
So get to sorting them.
I don't want to. It's like you fall behind after a week, and you're just like, I don't even know how I'm even going to get started on this, and it's just mind-boggling to think of how much stuff there is.
Sure.
And I do want to get into a little beer news before we get into the show proper. This is something we haven't had to talk about for a while. So if you haven't listened,
2 years, if the internet is to be believed.
If you picked up Draft Mechanic in the last 2 years, you haven't heard us talk about how frustrated we are when ABInBev buys another brewery, because the last time they did was Wicked Weed. And I actually remember very well when they bought Wicked Weed. It was our Scythe review episode. So it was we talked about that. We talked about Scythe. And I think we had Brian Surrey on that episode as well to talk about Coldwater Crown. But ABInBev is back at it, and they have purchased Platform Brewing in Ohio. This is actually kind of relevant because I remember when we've done kind of Beer Travelers or Origins prep episodes, we have mentioned Platform as a brewery to check out. And I'm really kind of frustrated and bummed that now they're on that list of breweries that I just am not going to support anymore.
Yeah, I mean, such is the way. They were getting really popular, so I guess they drew somebody's attention.
Yeah.
I know that ABInBev actually passed up on an offer to buy a majority share in a brewery that they already had a third ownership of.
It was like a big collective with, was it the Kona Brewing in Hawaii, and also App Mountain up in Boone was part of that group.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah, it was that group of a bunch of different breweries. I think A Mission is part of that as well.
Yeah, so they had a third stake in it, and they had an option to make an offer to have a full ownership of it, and they passed it up. right in the aftermath of deciding to buy a platform. So I guess that's where they're spending their money, see if they can spread it around a little bit more.
Oh, they're back at it again. But hey, do be aware, this is a thing that is really important to some people and not important to a lot of people, but we definitely like to bring it up again and again when ABInBev likes to purchase breweries because it seems to put a lot of strain on a lot of craft breweries. So if you are aware of that and are interested in that, be aware that Platform is now on that list.
Yeah, I mean, it's not so much that, you're sending your money to one brewery as opposed to sending it to another brewery, because that is part of it. But when you are buying from breweries that are owned by ABInBev, you're also putting money into lobbying dollars, which is actually probably a little bit more important, because ABInBev is pushing lobbyists to pass or maintain really hurtful laws to a lot of craft breweries in a lot of states. So it's not so much you're just giving your business to another brewery, which is fine. I mean, those people need to have jobs as well as everybody needs to have jobs. But you're also putting money in the hands of the wrong lobbyists if your interests are with craft beer. So
yeah.
That's why it kind of ticks us off so dang much.
And that is our PSA for this particular year. Hopefully that's the only time we have to mention it this year.
Yeah, good luck on that.
Hey, we went 2 years without them buying somebody up. I think we can wait a little bit.
But they're awake.
Daniel, it's been a little while since we've been back on a regular episode. We had the Gen Con post episode last time and the hype list before that.
I was wondering what this room was in our house for.
This room is where we record the podcast, believe it or not. This is also where the cat naps and rolls around on the ground. So usually at this time, we do a Kickstarter recap from the previous episode, but this is actually going to cover the last 2 episodes. I hope you're okay with that.
I mean, it's a lot of Kickstarters, but we have to tell people. First, we've got Rush MD from Artipia Games, which completed at $71,604 of their $20,000 goal, with 1,352 backers. They have one additional stretch goal that they unlocked that was a cardboard MRI scanner, so yeah, that's a thing if you wanted it. You can late pledge for this one as well, so if you're still interested in Rush MD, but you didn't get a chance to get in on the Kickstarter, or you've decided that you're interested since the Kickstarter ended, you can still get in on it.
Oh, did the cat come at you instead of me?
He did.
Oh, there we are.
One Small Step from Academy Games has completed with $120,949 of their $20,000 goal with 1,574 backers. They also have late pledges available, so if you want to pledge on a game about, going to the moon,
the space race,
now you can still do that.
Yeah.
Dice Throne Adventures from Roxley Games completed at $1.7 million of their $80,000 goal with 11,674 backers. You guessed it, pre-orders will be available soon, so sign up for the Kickstarter notification page to get on the Kickstarter notification page to get notified when their pre-orders are starting.
That is absolutely insane. When we talked about this one and they had like 2 or 3 days to go, they were at 1.1 million. So they added $600,000.
I'm guessing it was probably 2 days to go because they probably got that 48-hour bump.
That is something else. I want to play it, but it's way too much content for me to try to even get into at this point.
If I remember correctly, it was also way too much money. It was like
$300 to get in on everything.
Chainmail from Presspot Games completed at $729 of their $50 goal with 156 backers.
Woo.
That's a much more reasonable number.
Yeah.
This got started, and their stories are getting shipped out over this past weekend. So who knows when Jake's going to get his, because he is a part of one of those stories.
I'm so excited. I'm going to talk about it when I do. I think this is such an awesome concept.
Yeah.
And the Kickstarter downloadable content and stuff got sent out this weekend. So if we do decide to do one of these on our own, we have all the source material to do this in the future.
I know we were talking with Travis at Gen Con, and I think he said all of them were full except for one of like the romance stories or something, which is unsurprising that if one of those genres wasn't going to fill up, that's the one that didn't get a full second group.
Something heaving bodice.
Gross.
Yeah.
So gross. Smartphone Inc. from Cosmodrome and Arcane Wonders completed at $206,368 of their $50,000 goal. They had 3,533 backers, and they unlocked a whole ton of stretch goals, so that's pretty neat. I'm excited to see where that goes. And finally, Chiseled, a deck sculpting game from Copper Frog, was canceled and will relaunch this fall.
Yeah, I'm still interested to see this one. I'm going to definitely check it out, and I'm sure I'll bring it up again when they do relaunch that project later on. This is the one where you have your giant deck of cards that represents your block of marble, and you are using the tool cards to basically unconstruct your deck. It's kind of like the opposite of a deck builder. So you're just straight culling everything out of there to get to the point where you don't have negative cards. I think it's a really awesome concept. So I'll be looking at this, and we'll be mentioning it again when it does come up again.
Okay, why don't you tell us about some new projects?
New projects. So I have two that I've chosen this particular episode. The first one is Fiasco in a Box.
Now, I've heard of Fiasco before.
Oh, yes, you have. This is coming from Bully Pulpit Games. It's currently funding at $168,000 of its $10,000 goal.
That's a few.
With 3,038 backers. This one ends on Wednesday, September 4th, with an estimated delivery of September for the digital or December for the physical edition of this game. So basically, $30 gets you started with the physical, but there's a whole ton of scenario add-ons and different pledge levels that I'll let you all explore on Kickstarter, depending on how much you're interested in this. But like you said, this is Fiasco. It is the breakout one-shot GM-less RPG game for RPG game? Really? No, I'm out of tune here.
You want an ATM machine?
Yeah, I'm going to the ATM machine to get the money for my Kickstarter for the RPG game. Anyways, for 3 to 5 players, it's getting an upgrade from the original source book, which we have a copy of the actual book. But what they're doing is putting it in a box and giving you a whole bunch of decks of cards.
Put that book in a box.
It's important. Beyond the book, you're getting a bunch of decks of cards that will help you kind of manage it and make the gameplay simpler and actually kind of refine it so that you are able to go like, I want to do this scenario pack, but I want to have these kind of tools in there to assist us, some prompts and stuff like that. So it's a really neat idea, and you and your friends can get this with no preparation. You can start having a wacky time telling stories of a heist, caper, scam, grift, or other hilariously disastrous situation. You probably want this. Like,
Is it just the first book?
It is. They have the first book and then a whole bunch of content kind of curated from the entire history of Fiasco. So, like, all of the most popular scenarios are available either in the box or as add-ons. This is why there's so many different kind of pledge levels there.
Oh.
So it's basically, they took the bunch of books that there are and then refined them into this new system with decks of cards to make the setup even easier and the gameplay even smoother. So
and it's in a box now.
They do put it in a box, too. And then you get to have a little bit more fun. I don't know. Like, if you don't have Fiasco and you like these kind of storytelling games, that's a kind of a weird Venn diagram, honestly, because I feel like if you like these storytelling games, you've probably played Fiasco by now.
We just got Fiasco recently, and we
Yeah.
like these storytelling games, so
But-
there's probably some folks out there.
Yeah, and like realistically, I kind of am looking at this pretty closely because I'm like, oh, that's really good. They actually announced that this was coming to Kickstarter like a week after I got the Fiasco book, and I feel kind of silly about it now.
Dag.
But like, it's really cool, and it's a great opportunity to get in on something like this, and it sounds like it's going to be super easy to kind of just get to the table and have some fun with your friends. And that's what this is about, telling a fun story of something gone ridiculously wrong.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, so Fiasco, you've got basically a week and a half? Yeah. What day is this? This is let me
The
check.
25th of August.
25th. Well, tomorrow will be the 26th, which is when some people have the first opportunity to hear this episode. So what? You got
Literally everybody but us.
You got a week and a half. Yeah. Fiasco. Go check it out. The other one is one that I think we talked about a little bit on our Gen Con hype list and then briefly kind of came back to it on the Gen Con episode.
Yeah, but some people don't listen to that.
Yes, but it has launched on Kickstarter, and you have a few days left to look at Sleeping Gods, which is coming from Red Raven Games. This is currently funding at $851,000 of its $50,000 goal, with 8,664 backers, of which I was one in the first few minutes. Because
Of course you were.
have been waiting a very long time to get this thing going. This is ending on Thursday, August 29th, with an estimated delivery of May of next year. $70 pledge for the base game, $100 adds the expansion, and then there's a few more pledge levels with more content. There's like a world lore book, and then there's like a battle mat and all these other fun upgrades. There's a soundtrack. Believe it or not, there's a soundtrack for this game.
Does Ryan Lockett write the music for the soundtrack?
No, it was his sister. Yep.
I'm both disappointed and really encouraged by that.
So anyway, Ryan Lockett is back with his next big box game after Near and Far, which was our kind of consensus favorite game of 2017, when we went back and did that redux of 2017. But Ryan is diving deep into the story/narrative side of his design. This is a 1 to 4 player open world campaign game that promises a 10 to 20 hour campaign with freedom to save at will and also drop players in and out as you want. Save that nugget of thought there, because I want to come back to that after I'm talking about Sleeping Gods here. So you and your friends are Captain Sophia Odessa and her crew, lost in the wandering sea on a 1920s steamship. You are attempting to awaken the sleeping gods so that you can return home. The game comes with like a 18-page atlas that is your world map, which is kind of reminiscent of Near and Far.
More than kind of.
Yeah, it also has a giant storybook, which is very reminiscent of Near and Far or Above and Below. He's really just kind of building on this system, and it looks like he's trying to go swing it even further towards the narrative side of things. Specifically in that this is not a, 10-game campaign. This is one giant campaign that you're going to be exploring and coming back to and kind of working your way through over the 10 to 20 hours of the campaign. Mechanics-wise, I'll be honest, I didn't look super deep into it because I really trust Ryan Lockett at this point. The last few games that have been his designs that have been these really big ones, Near and Far, Islebound, and even Above and Below have just done such amazing things that I can look at this and I can see, okay, so there's pieces in here. I understand vaguely what we're going for, and I'm going to trust Ryan Lockett to make this one a big hit. You are glaring at me now.
Above and Below was not that great of a hit for me. I know we played it a couple of times and it felt more stressful than it felt good.
I feel like Above and Below just kind of laid the groundwork for Near and Far. So if he's taking a step further in that direction, I'm pretty confident I'm going to have fun playing this game.
I mean, I didn't look into this because I knew you were going to buy it anyway. But I'm curious to see what's coming from Red Raven Games. I mean, they are...
Hello, Cat.
They are generally pretty good times lately, so...
Mm-hmm. So why I kind of said put a pin in it earlier. So we've got... Sleeping Gods here, 10 to 20 hour campaign game with freedom to save at will and also drop players in and out as you want. It sounds very familiar to something we talked about back in the year 2017, specifically the Seventh Continent.
Yeah.
A very similar kind of thought there. And then we've also got 1001 Odysseys coming up from Asmodee.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of when you said it.
But it's really interesting. Like, I feel like this is the first time that we're seeing these games come out that are these trying to break out of the two-hour game or, the campaign game with a bunch of different sessions kind of mode. How are you feeling about this change in games? Is this exciting to you? Is this something you want to see more of?
I am hesitant about it, as I am with so many things, because I feel like it's going to sort of eliminate a lot of players. There are a lot of people for whom 2 hours at a clip is the max that they're going to put into something.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people, ourselves included, that have a difficult time getting together the same group of people. Now, you said you can drop in and out players at will, but we've seen things before where it's like you can drop in and out at will, but the people who are invested in that story in the previous segment are going to want to see what happens to the characters that they know about.
Right.
So you do kind of hurt people's feelings when you're like, oh, you couldn't get together? We kicked you out for this round and we just continued the story. You can come back in like 2 weeks if you want, maybe, if there's room for you. Like, that doesn't feel great to me. And while I understand that they're trying to make it adaptable for people sort of solving the RPG problem where people can't get their RPG groups together because we're all adults and we have things to do, it still feels like you either are there for the story or you're missing out on something.
Okay.
At the same time, I am absolutely jazzed about 1001 Odysseys, so I am hypocritical, I guess, in my skepticism. But I don't need like 9 of these games.
Yeah.
I need 1, maybe 2. And need is a strong word. I'm excited about 2, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But I think we probably don't need people to keep making these.
I think one thing that's interesting about this as well is when I first heard about Sleeping Gods, it was listed as a 1 to 2 player game. So it seems like sometime between the initial development of the game and here we are at the launch here, he decided to expand it to up to 4 players. I'm wondering if that changed mechanically the way the game works, if that was actually necessary for the game, or if it was something that was really done just because, hey, we say this is 1 to 2 players, but you can play it with 3 or 4, so you might as well.
I mean, 4 players is the sweet spot for games, at least.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to sell a lot more of them if you say it plays up to 4. People are willing to get 4 people to the table. Whereas it may have been better with 1 to 2, and I have a feeling it would have had a lot more devoted players if they were recommending it for 2. They also probably would have sold more copies because then you have to buy twice as many. But I have a feeling a lot of people just wouldn't have looked at it if they said only 1 to 2. But it really is the kind of thing where if you're dedicating 10 to 20 hours to a story, it's great for if you have a roommate or a spouse or somebody that you regularly game with, as opposed to trying to get 4 people together. So I think it may have been a move to try to get more people to buy it, but at the same time, I think this really probably should be played with 1 to 2.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly, I expect this to feel a lot the same about how I felt about Seventh Continent. Again, Seventh Continent can have up to 4 players, but I can't imagine playing that with 3. I just don't think you want to do that with 3. And I wouldn't be surprised if 1001 Odysseys might be different because you have different crew stations.
1001 Odysseys is much more involving of the 4 different crew members as it works.
So you think that'll need to be a 4 player?
I don't think it needs to be a 4-player, but I can see how it would benefit from having more players because there are different things that each person is doing throughout the game. It's not just like, oh, we're all sitting and waiting for this one thing to happen. Everybody has their different position.
Mm-hmm. So coming back around to it, we are kind of, we're going to have a lot of these kind of games next year, obviously with Sleeping Gods, 1001 Odysseys, and I'm sure there's going to be a handful of other ones that will come up.
We also need to finish playing Seventh Continent.
You're not wrong about that. But which style of legacy/campaign game do you find more enticing right now? The multiple sessions like Charterstone or something we've done like that? Or one of these kind of open world, long form games that have a 10 to 20 hour campaign? What's more interesting to you?
I mean, I feel like they scratch completely different itches. Mm-hmm. I feel like something like Charterstone is something I'll break out if we're having a game night. If we have a couple of friends over and we want to play a bunch of games, we'll invite our Charterstone group, or we'll invite, when we were doing Near and Far, we'd invite Tamara over and we'd do a couple of games as a group. Whereas if you're talking about something that is not necessarily a set time limit on each play, you can do what we did with Seventh Continent, where we went like 7 hours and you and I just played Seventh Continent for the afternoon, or what we did with Escape Tales, where we just played it until it was 3 o'clock in the morning and we're like, oh, dag. We should, as it turned out, we should play Koi with Eric, but that was something else entirely. Like, that was a special situation. But we played it until something came to stop us and we were like, oh, okay, I guess we have to do this other thing now.
Yeah.
So I feel like they scratch completely different scenarios and different time structures.
Okay.
If we have an afternoon that's free, rare as that is, I would like to play one of these big games with you. I think that's fun. We can really get into the story and get focused on it.
Yeah.
But if we're having a bunch of people over, I'd rather have something that I can play episodically, especially if it can jump people in or out. Because then we can play that, and we can play a card game to chat about, and we can just sit and talk for a while, and we can watch YouTube for a while, and it fits more an entertaining scenario.
Okay, I see where you're at there. Well, either way, if you were listening to this episode in the first few days of release, you still have a chance to go back Sleeping Gods. I did pretty much immediately, but then kind of just because I trust Red Raven Games to do me well, and this game is super exciting. One of my top things to look at Gen Con, and one of my top games that I'm most excited about for 2020. So, that is that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think we usually go and talk about the games we played recently now.
Yeah.
It's been a minute, so I guess I hit the bump music, right?
Do it. Want to wear your Draft Mechanic pride to your local brewery, board game meetup, or board game meetup at a brewery? Check out redbubble.com/people/Draft Mechanic for t-shirts. Gen Con.
It happened. Not the best start to a segment. I'm sorry. I'm shaking off the podcast ring rust here. So, wandering around Gen Con, I ended up swinging by Mattel's booth because last year at Gen Con we saw Spirits of the Wild and I was super excited about that. We've talked about that and played that. It was either last year or the year before. I don't know. I'm just
last year.
Yeah, I'm just talking about Mattel. Anyway, I walked up to Mattel to get a copy of Pictionary Air, which we're not talking about right now, but I'm just literally standing there at the checkout and I look to the side and I see a sign for Blokus Puzzle and I'm like, now, hang on. Nobody's talking about this. And I, did a BGC search later. It doesn't exist on Board Game Geek. And, well, you know what? I'm going to treat it as if it were a game, even though it's a one-player game and it's a puzzle. Because one-player games are always puzzles, right?
I mean, kind of. You're just playing against either a rubric or yourself. Yeah. So, yeah.
I like polyominoes, so it was no surprise that I picked up Blokus Puzzle, which is a 2019 release from Mattel. It plays one player in however many minutes you want. Its designers are, I don't know, they're not really listed, but Bernard Tavidian is the designer of the original Blokus, and the art is based on geometry, basically shapes. So this is a puzzle game that is based on Blokus mechanics, and it's not on BGG. I'm sorry, but it's not.
Okay, I was kind of surprised when you picked this up because we have Blokus and I hate it. So you bought it and I was like, okay, I guess this is a thing we're doing.
Oh crap, he got me money again.
Yeah, well.
Stop letting Jake go to booths by himself.
I was standing right next to you. Blokus Puzzle is a game where you are essentially given a plastic card holder which has inserts for tetromino pieces that you are going to be putting onto the little holder in order to solve the puzzle which is on each card. There are 3 different types of puzzles. You're going to slide them in one at a time into the card holder, and they will tell you which of the many polyomino pieces, I think there are 21 of them total because I counted them when I put it away to make sure I hadn't lost one. And you're going to get to have those pieces, and you must use all and only those pieces to either connect 2 pieces which are drawn on the puzzle card, not going over any of the black shaded squares which are forbidden.
Forbidden squares.
Indeed. Or you are trying to cover the stars from a starting point and moving to cover the stars that are drawn on there on the yellow puzzles, or the red puzzles where you are trying to place all of the pieces that they give you, avoiding all of the X'd out spaces as well as the black squares. So you're just trying to get everything that they've given you onto the board without placing it somewhere it's not allowed to go. The way that you place the pieces is standard for Blokus. It's where the pieces can touch on a corner, but they cannot have any portion of their sides overlapping. So sort of the opposite of orthogonal, you can place only on the diagonal squares. So you're just going to slide whatever card you'd like to be using. I would suggest you go in order for whichever type you're using, because your brain does sort of get locked into the way of thinking. The first puzzle I did took me way longer than it should have, because I was just like, oh god, I need to get in this Blokus thinking, I need to figure out how this puzzle works. Whereas the second and third and fourth ones of a type were way easier, just because my brain was like, oh, that's how we think now. It's like when you're trying to think in a different language. Once you get switched over to it, you're fine. So you're going to play as many of these as you want. There are plenty of puzzles in the box. You have, like I said, the 3 different kinds. So if you wanted to switch it up, you could play some blue puzzles, play some yellow puzzles, then play some red ones. Maybe you just want to play the red ones today. You play for as long as you want, so there's no real time limit on this.
Puzzles.
And you just place the pieces, and that's it. That's all the game is.
It's a better polyomino game than Second Chance.
Yes. It also has more things to lose.
That's true.
Which is honestly a component gripe that I'm going to make with this game right off the bat.
Get at it.
While I really like the pieces, they lock into the piece grid really nicely for the puzzle section. Mm-hmm. The area that tells you what pieces you're going to use looks like it should be recessed so that you can place the pieces there and they don't slide off, but it's not. And there's really nowhere to put the pieces while you're trying to use them, so you either have to like hold them in your hand and try to remember what shape they are and how they look and keep it there, or you're just trying to like put them, I don't know, I put them in like the scoop of my shirt at one point on the bottom of my shirt. It's not really travel friendly, which is something that this game would excel at super well. Mm-hmm. It has that card holder. It's fairly compact. You could just take a couple of them, put them in whatever you're bringing on an airplane with you, and you could just play that. Except the pieces are going to go everywhere, and they're going to end up under the seat in front of you, and the person in front of you is not going to be wearing any shoes, and it's going to be disgusting, and you're going to lose it in like 5 minutes. They made these cool locking pieces, but they didn't put anywhere for you to set them while you're using them.
It absolutely befuddles me that this nice plastic case does not have any storage in it. The bag that holds all the pieces, I put there. There was no bag.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it's just a box full of pieces when you open it?
Yeah. And like there's no storage for the cards either, which again is kind of silly and weird. I would have expected it to just be like, make this thing an inch deeper, and then you can just put everything in there and, you know, have like a little swinging lid or something, and then you're good.
Yeah, and frankly, if you're storing it in the box isn't super well made. Like, mm-hmm. The tab on the box is already coming apart on ours. Mm-hmm. So you're probably going to not have a very durable box.
Boo.
As well.
Boo to these items. But yay to the actual thing, because I just really like polyomino puzzles, and this one was fun, and I really enjoy playing with Blokus pieces. It does make you think in a different way, and I really like that.
Yeah, I mean, it was better than I anticipated it was going to be, but as we've established, my bar was set fairly low to start with. It was fun. It was a little bit frustrating to get sort of that adaptation to how do I do these puzzles. And there was a little bit of an unclear nature about the red puzzles in the rules.
Yeah.
Because the rules are literally a pamphlet, because this is a Mattel game, they state that you need to place all the pieces out onto the board from the starting spot in order to solve the puzzle. Well, on the other 2 kinds of puzzles, you need to have a trail from the starting spot to either cover the stars or to connect to the other piece. On the red puzzle, you just have to fit the pieces anywhere out as long as they come off that starting spot. So I remember, like, the second or third puzzle, I'm looking at it and I'm like, I can't make a solid line from this to fill. And that wasn't the case. You could make multiple lines off the starting space, but that wasn't ever really clear. So until I looked at the answer on the back, I was like, I don't know how to do this. This is frustrating.
That's weird.
So I will say, if you do that, note that on the red puzzles, you can have multiple little tendrils off that starting space.
Now I know. And knowing is something.
Knowing is something.
All right.
It's fine if you want puzzles.
I do want puzzles.
I normally do too. I don't know. I'm kind of cool on this. I think I'd rather just bring a crossword book with me than bring
fair.
this. And it's the same kind of activity. Like, you are just solving puzzles by yourself. It is entirely solitary, and it is very repetitive in the same way that a lot of like a written puzzle would be. So I think I'd rather just do a crossword.
The zen of polyomino.
And I probably won't lose the crossword.
Yeah, well, anyway, Blokus puzzle. It exists. If you like Blokus, I guess you can get it. It's like $15. So, yeah. It's pretty simple. I don't know how we're going to link this in the show notes, but we'll figure it out.
That's really my problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's talk about Moonbase.
Moonbase!
Moonbase is a 2019 release from Itten that plays 2 players in 30 to 60 minutes.
That's twice as many players.
It is twice as many players. The designer is Naotaka Shimamoto, and the artist is Yoshiaki Tomioka. This is a game of area control, abstract strategy, and moon rings.
Moon rings.
You know moon rings. You're familiar.
Yeah, so in Moonbase, you and your opponent are building rings on the moon. I guess the rings are part of like a base that you're all constructed.
This is the worst design base ever.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, like rings are like a really good construction material for outer space. Not material, but construction engineering. You ever see 2001: A Space Odyssey?
No.
Yeah, they have a ring in there, I guess. And Halo had a ring. That was a ring, right?
The video game?
Yeah, that's a ring. Anyway, in Moonbase, y'all are building a base on the moon. Good job. One player has the gold color, one player has the silver color, and then there's a blue color, which is the neutral color. I guess you're all just constructing a neutral thing as well. But you start with this board that is a moon, or not a moon, is the moon, and there's different sized craters on it, and you're going to take turns doing a few different steps over 6 rounds. Each round you're going to draft some of the rings. There's sets of large rings and small rings. You stack them up in the beginning of the game into some different stacks, and one player is going to take 2 rings off of one stack, the other player is going to take 2 rings off another stack, and you're going to start each round with 2 large and 2 small rings. It's important to kind of do a little bit of strategy here because you're going to see exactly what rings you're taking throughout the entire game, so you might do a little maneuvering there and be like, I'm going to take your rings and put them in places that suck. And the other person's going to be like, I'm going to take my rings and put them places that are good. And then nobody does anything with the other rings. And then you lose. That's just me.
Yeah, that's an error. You should take some of the neutral rings sometimes.
So, after you've done your ring selection, players are going to take turns back and forth placing rings onto the moon. If you are starting out, you're going to be placing your rings onto the craters. There's large craters and small craters that are the size of the large rings and the small rings.
No way.
Yes way. You can just place them straight up, large on large, small on small, however you want, as long as you don't overlap or anything, because that's not how rings work.
Yet.
But then, once you get up to the second level up, you are allowed to place rings on top of other rings. The rules for placing rings are as follows. You may place a ring onto 2 other rings, kind of balance it there, if its color equals one of the 2 colors below it. So you can place a silver on top of a silver and blue to kind of make a little pyramid of the 3 things. The other option you have is you can place a ring on top of, hold on, let me think about this. So yeah, you can place a large ring on top of 2 rings that are the other 2 colors. So if I had the silver ring, I could place it on top of a gold and a blue ring, and then I would put that ring there, and then I would move the special moon base.
Looks like a giant sorry piece.
Into the middle of that ring, which is good because at the end of the game, whoever's ring has that in it will have 3 additional points. Points is how you win this game. So you're going to continue placing rings back and forth each round of the game, and then at the end of the round, if one of your rings one of your large rings is not covered by any other ring, so it's totally open from the top, you get to place one of your large hexagons in there because you have large hexagons and you want to plant those large hexagons onto the moon board over the 6 rounds of the game. Yeah.
But you've also got small hexagons.
Yeah, so if you fail to place a large hexagon, rather than just feeling sad, you do get to place a small hexagon onto a crater in the moon, basically blocking it off from being used in the future, which makes you feel good, I guess, but it doesn't get you as many points. At the end of the game, having large hexagons out will be 2 points each, and the small hexagons will be 1 point each, so you're at least going to get a few points every round, no matter how bad you do. You'll continue to go on through the rest of the game, taking, rings and place them onto the moon base until you're done with all 6 rounds. Like I said, whoever has the moon base mobile unit sorry pawn in one of their rings will get 3 points. If it's in the blue ring, then it won't get any points because the blue player doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. And you'll also get points if you have the longest connected chain of your color rings, and also whoever has the highest item on the particular moon base stacking pile of rings as well. And then you're the best moon baser, I guess, or the second best moon baser. or the third best if somehow you lost to blue, which doesn't have any points.
Yeah, no.
Don't lose to blue. It would be
not possible.
Yeah, I guess that's not. No. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Plays about half an hour, and you do a lot of stacking and maneuvering. My initial impressions on this game, I was surprised how it forces you to be really aggressive with your ring placement. Like, generally in abstract games, I want to, do moves that are beneficial to myself rather than blocking the other player. But if you don't really aggressively go at the other player and try to maneuver around them, you're not going to do very well in this game. Do you think that's fair?
You definitely need to make sure that you're blocking off the routes that the other player has, particularly because you get to plan and see what's going to be available to them on future turns. Everything about this game is really open to you at the beginning of the game. You know the order in which the rings are going to come out, which rings are going to be available. You know who's going to pick the rings on which turn, because the first player will pick first on the both large and small rings on their turn. And it alternates. So if you pick first on this round, I know I'm going to pick first on the next round, and you're going to pick first on the round after that. So you can really look at the rings and be like, okay, what can I take? What is that going to leave open? What is that going to give the other player as an opportunity to stack on top of stuff? And you definitely need to block off their alleys to placing their own rings on higher levels so that you can... I mean, it's less about making your own points and more so making sure that the other player doesn't fulfill the stuff that they're working towards.
Yeah.
That's the entire point of that blue color, is to block the other player off.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a little bit of it you can use to build your own stuff. Like if you have a ring of your color, you can put a blue ring next to it so that you can place on top of it, assuming that the other player doesn't have a blue ring that they're going to be able to place on top of it and block you off. But like the entire point of the blue is to be like, oh, I see you want to stack on top of those two because you have that color. I'm going to put a blue one there because one of the rings on the bottom is blue, or I'm going to put a blue one there because neither of them is blue, and I can place that purple research station because you can't place rings on top of the research station.
Mm-hmm.
It's really strategic in that way. At the same time, it is also just... It's really accessible for an abstract for some reason to me.
Okay.
I think anybody who's listened to this podcast for more than a few episodes knows that abstracts really aren't my wheelhouse. My wheels are kept far from abstracts usually. But this one is, while not my favorite game and not even my favorite abstract game, it is certainly more top tier for me. It was fun to do because I think the fact that you could plan it all out ahead of time made me feel like I could control a little bit of what was going on.
Okay.
But at the same time, I couldn't control everything about what was going on, so I didn't sit there for an hour and try to be like, okay, well, if I take these two rings, what is then going to be the entire rest of the game? It's like I can plan it out for a turn or two forward, but I don't know which ones you're going to take going from there.
I really, really enjoyed this, and I'm glad because it was kind of a pick up on a whim. I picked it up on a recommendation from Eric Yurko from What's Eric's Play.
Don't lie, you got it because you went to Itten and Itten was selling it.
Yeah, but I specifically looked for this one because of Eric's recommendation. He said it was a really good two-player abstract. But yeah, I really do enjoy it, and I'm glad to see Itten continuing to do more interesting games like this. I'm a big fan of Tokyo Highway. Obviously, we've talked about that in the past. I've played the four-player version and really enjoy it. So I'm excited to see them continue to put out more interesting games that aren't just a dexterity gimmick like Stonehenge in the Sun was. I still want to play that, but that was a super gimmicky kind of game. And to see them moving into some of these weird abstract games as well and putting them out was really kind of good for me. I like their component quality a lot. I don't know why, I just feel the rings are really satisfying to play with. They're kind of that, not like heavy wood, but they're kind of a lighter wood, and they're well manufactured. Everything stacks really satisfyingly, I think is the word I want for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there is a rule about placement where you have to place the ring so that you can see through, like, imagine a baseball, the outside part of the baseball and the outside of the seams. You have to be able to see through that on each of the rings when you place it, so that you can't just, place something out all the way on the far edge so that nobody can actually physically get a ring that stacks on top of it. You need to place it in a way that you're playing the game with your mind, not playing the game with your balancing skills.
Yeah. So, yeah. Moonbase. I'm super excited to have it. Going to throw this one in the game night bag for a long night to come, I'm pretty sure. Not a long night, for a long time to come. There we go. Those are the words I want. I would like to talk about another dexterity game. Danielle, we're going to talk about Wobble King, 2018 release from HABA Games, 2 to 4 players, 5 to 15 minutes, designed by Heinz Meister, with art by Pascal Nuldner. This is a game of dexterity, of balance, and stick, and wobbling. And just a heads up, this one and our next HABA title were both review copies from HABA, so thank them for passing those on to us.
So in Wobble King, you have a king meeple, which has a little flat bit on the bottom, but is mostly fairly rounded. And you are going to set him on top of a carpet because he is taking a nap on top of all his riches. The riches in this scenario are little cylindrical pieces which are painted silver and placed underneath the carpet. You set them out so the flat part is on top and the carpet is sitting on top of them. Well, all of the king's guards have decided that he needs to be relieved of a little bit of his riches. So they are going to take their guard sticks, which in this case is a squared off stick that you have, which is a small wooden stick, and they're going to fish it under this carpet and try to pull them out without waking the king by jostling him too much. So you are going to fish underneath the carpet and pull out at least one of these silver cylinders. And then once you've done so, you're going to fish out whatever ones you pulled, and you're going to place them onto the circles which are printed on the top of the carpet. Now, once there is a piece of treasure in each of the carpet spaces, obviously you can't place another one there. So there is some strategy about whether or not you're going to put them back onto the side that is already fairly unsupported, because there's only 2 more pieces of treasure than there are spaces on top. If the guards manage to fish out all of the treasure that has space to be placed on top of the carpet, so everything but those 2 ones that are left underneath, then you're going to play another round. If somebody either knocks over the king meeple or causes the carpet to touch the table because it has become unstable, then they are going to get a rotten tomato thrown at them, because apparently the king is not too terribly concerned with his wealth. He's just going to throw a tomato at you if you try to steal from him.
Tomatoes are really the treasure we found along the way.
I feel like this is really lax punishment on extortion, but whatever. You are then going to play another round, and if a player gets 2 rotten tomatoes thrown at them, they are the loser and everyone else is the winner, and everyone else gets to go, haha, you are bad at Wobble King, because that is the entirety of how you play Wobble King.
Yes, and by claiming that the round will end with a tomato is worthy of an asterisk, because I would honestly say most rounds of Wobble King ended because we got all the tokens out, because this is not a dexterity game that is super challenging for older persons.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a family weight game. It is meant to include all ages, and frankly, there were definitely some times when the king was just sort of unstable, because you're not allowed to look at where the gold piece, or the silver pieces rather, are under the carpet. You're just sort of poking the stick around in there, and it is entirely possible that somebody could fish out all the silver under one side and leave that side as the side that you have to place on, and you are absolutely going to get a tomato in that scenario. There's no way that you're going to absolutely beat gravity. But even if you do have to do it again, this is like a 5-minute round.
Yeah.
You're going to be able to play this a bunch of times. I do have a feeling that if you are not paying real close attention, or if you're playing on an uneven table, this is going to go a lot less smoothly than our plays did. We were playing on our coffee table, which is very nice and flat, and we were paying attention to it. Whereas if you're going to bring this, like, we would probably bring this to game night at the brewery, which people are going to be knocking the table because, you've got drinks on the table, you've got people moving around, there are servers moving around the spot. Like, I could absolutely see this ending in Rotten Tomatoes if we brought it out, which is, I think, where this game would thrive. This is not a game where you sit down at the coffee table and we're going to have a very serious game of Wobble King.
Serious dexterity.
And we're not going to breathe on it. It's just going to be very serious. This is a fun family game, or a game for a group of friends that you bring out and you're trying to fish this stupid little stick underneath there, and it's not stupid. It's a fine stick. It works fine. But, like, you're just trying to fish underneath there blindly and, like, listen to what you're poking and see where you're moving things around. And it's going to get out of control in your thoughts about, like, oh, can I pull this one out? I think I can get all of the ones on this. Oh, I shouldn't have gone for all of the ones on that side. I tipped the carpet over. I think the fun nature of this goes really well with how short it is. That being said, like, obviously this is a thing that is just a filler. This is not going to be everybody's favorite game. I guess maybe if you have kids, this might be their favorite game, because you got the little wobbly Lion King piece and he sits on top of the thing and you're trying not to knock him over. But if you're a gamer group, this is probably not going to be anybody's favorite game.
Yeah, I think that, when we talk about HABA's games, there are those that kind of scale for everybody everywhere, and then there's ones that are kind of really suitable for that family level. And I feel like this is more of that. This is suitable for, you've got this is a game that you can have all your kids involved in, or a whole bunch of children involved in, rather than, like I said, a bunch of us kind of, middle-aged. Are we middle-aged now?
No, no.
Are we in the Middle Ages?
Let's not figure this out. But I think you did actually bring this to our bottle share at Gen Con,
yes.
and those games, definitely I saw a couple of them end in Rotten Tomatoes being thrown. So if you have this out in that sort of more fun and hectic environment, I think it's going to be more likely to end in tomatoes being thrown.
Yeah. Well, that is Wobble King. It is available from HABA Games.
Our next game that we're going to talk about is also from HABA Games. It is Dragon's Breath, which is a 2017 release and plays 2 to 4 players in 15 to 20 minutes. The designers are Gunther and Lena Burkhardt, and the artist is Daniel Dobner. This is a slight dexterity game of crystal collection, and Dragon Dad just doing his best.
He's doing his very best to raise these kids and teach them the value of collecting crystals that came out of this ice column in the forest.
Yeah, the traditional story.
Yeah. So this is the 2017 Kinderspiel winner from HABA Games, and to spoil it, I kind of understand why. So in Dragon's Breath, you have a kind of a board that sets inside the box, because the box has some different compartments under it that you're going to be putting the little acrylic crystal tokens into. I'll talk about that.
We'll come back to that here.
But in the center of it, you have a little circular disc, which is an ice flow, and then you have these rings that you will be stacking up to kind of create a column that you will pour a whole bunch of the acrylic crystals into.
If you have ever seen shower curtain holders, plastic shower curtain holders, imagine that. That's essentially what they are. They are the same size and shape.
Yeah, so you have this column, and it's filled with a whole bunch of the acrylic crystals that you've seen in every board game ever, in 5 different colors. And basically your gameplay here is each player is going to take turns deciding which color they think is going to fall out the most out of this ice flow when the Dragon Dad player for that round lifts the top ring off. Because obviously, as you lift a ring off, some of the crystals are not going to be held in anymore. They'll fall to the ground, and if you're really lucky, you will have selected one of the color tokens that is the one that is the most crystals. Because any crystals that match your color token, you will get to keep and put into your own tiny little compartment underneath the board. The components on this is really, really nice. By the way, if you haven't seen it, I just love the way that the box works together to hold all the crystals, and you have little storage cubbies for everybody. You have a little standing up little dragon kid that goes in your corner, so you know which one of yours is.
You can also bounce the crystals off the back of them to get them into the little hole, which is what I ended up doing most of the time.
There's also a few little holes around the center that kind of add a little bit of randomness, in that when you lift that ring off and some crystals fall, some of them could go into one of those little holes, and those are Dragon Dad's crystals. They go into Dragon Dad's cave, and he gets to have them for later. I don't know what for, but I guess just to teach kids that the house always wins.
Dragon Dad needs nice things too.
Yeah, so there's 5 different colors. If you're playing 3 or 4 players, everybody selects 1. If you're playing a 2-player game, each player selects 2, and then the active player pulls the top ring off. Crystals go where they may, and if you're lucky, you get some of them for you. And then whoever has the most crystals in their little cubby hole at the end of the game will be the winner, and they'll be the best dragon kid collector, I
Obviously.
guess. Yeah, something like that.
So this is a game about teaching children how to wager.
Yeah, sure.
And it's super fun. I did not expect to love this game. I thought this was going to be another family weight game from HABA, which is great, but we don't play games with families very often. Our families live far away. We don't have lots of friends who have families. So, we had gotten this, and I was not super excited to play it. But you know what? We played it, and I immediately wanted to play it again.
And we did.
Yes. Because it's fun. You are looking at the stack of stuff, and you're going, okay, what's going to fall off? There are some that are obvious. There are ones that are sitting on the outer edge of the top ring, and obviously those are going to fall. But are they going to fall in the holes? I mean, they're right by there. And is the one a little bit farther down going to fall, or is that actually supported by something underneath? And is the green crystal yellow or green, which is a thing I had a problem with a lot of the time.
Yeah, that is true.
There is a little bit of difficulty seeing whether something is green or yellow, but we were not playing in the most well-lit room, so that might be that. And you're deciding what you're going to pick, and then you take it. And in a 2-player game especially, you get a second pick. So you get the first thing, and you're like, okay, this is definitely the one I want. And then obviously the first player takes that, and they're like, oh, what am I going to do? Okay, I'll take this other thing, which is second. But then you go around the second time, and you're like, okay, well, what's my second pick? Because maybe I have misjudged this entirely. And maybe what I think is going to fall is completely not going to fall. And it's actually going to go in a different direction. Maybe they're going to take that ring off in a different direction. And it's going to just affect the way things fall. So you're making that second pick. And a lot of times my second pick was the thing that got me way more points. Because I was looking at it, I was like, I misjudged this poorly.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, something would fall in one of Dragon Dad's holes through the ice, and you're like, oh, okay, well, I guess I missed out on that. But it happened about equally for everyone. I never really felt like I was absolutely just destroyed by that. Mm-hmm. And if you are, I mean, it's still kind of funny, like, oh, Dragon Dad kept taking all my stuff. Why am I not Dragon Dad's favorite? And you're just going to play it. It's quick enough that you're only playing like 8 rounds in a 2-player game, 9 rounds, I think, in a 3-player game, mm-hmm. and 4 is also 8 rounds. Yeah. So you're playing this real quick. There's not a lot to do, but it is stupid fun. I like it.
I was surprised how much strategy there actually was. Like, it's obviously not a huge, heavy strategy game, but there's a decent bit of strategy in, again, picking which one you want to go with, and also how you take the ring off, because you can take it off quick and let stuff fly all over the place. You can go slow and try to not jostle a lot of stuff. If you see the other player's got purple, and there's purples that are kind of in the middle that might go somewhere, you're allowed to take that ring off however you want. And that's something that I really appreciated with this, is that you can kind of be as dramatic about it as you want, and that is actually a little bit of strategy for this game. Like I said on the last one, there's ones that I feel scale really well for all ages, and there's ones that really kind of reside in that family weight game. I honestly think Dragon's Breath is one of those games that scales super well for a bunch of different ages, a bunch of different scenarios. And I feel like this is the kind of game that I could bring out with anybody pretty much any time if they just want to have a fun little dexterity thing for 15, 20 minutes. It really fits a great spot there. And then it's enhanced so well by the components. I think the component quality on this one is one of the best HABA games of this weight that I would say.
Yeah,
like,
the only other thing I can think that rivals it is maybe Go Cuckoo, which has...
Yeah, Goku had the sticks and
the can and all the legs and Kiki Cuckoo.
Yeah, but Dragon's Breath just has a really great table presence. They did a lot of stuff they didn't have to do to make this game look great, and the gameplay is actually pretty darn nice.
There's a big old Dragon Dad meeple, which has like holographic rainbow details on it, which is fun.
Mm-hmm. Dragon Dad, he's trying his best.
He is trying his best, and we'll talk about Dragon Dad a little bit more later. But he's like, it's a good fun game. I really liked it, and it's the kind of thing that is just a really quick, while you're talking with somebody at the end of a night of games, you pull this out, be like, oh, well, we're just chatting for a while. We've done all of our hard thinking. We've played our Terraforming Mars and our Vital Lacerda games, but, you're still here and we're chatting about whatever's going on in your life. Let's play this Dragon's Breath game while we're doing it. It's fun, and I think even if you don't have a family to play with, even if you're playing with just gamers or just friends or whatever, I think this is going to be one of those ones that everybody can find a little bit of joy in.
Yeah, well, that is Dragon's Breath. This one goes right in the game bag for me, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, well, we enjoyed it so much that Danielle decided, hey, this is going to be our on tap, so let's go to a break, and we'll come back with some delicious beer pairings for Dragon Dad. For more information on the beers we chose to pair with today's game on tap, check out the show notes section at our website, draftmechanic.net. In case you're coming into this episode at the 52-minute-ish mark...
Weird choice.
Yeah, that's a way to live. But anyway, we're talking about Dragon's Breath, the 2017 release from HABA Games. It plays 2 to 4 players, 15 to 20 minutes, designed by Gunter and Lena Burkhardt, with art by Daniel Dubner. It's a slight dexterity game of Crystal Collection, and Dragon Dad just trying to raise his kids good by teaching them how to collect crystals, I guess. Danielle, you got some beers to pair?
I do. First up, from 450 North Brewing Company in Columbus, Indiana, we have Slushy Dragon's Breath. This is a fruited sour. It is 4.5% alcohol, and it is a sour conditioned with dragon fruit, passion fruit, and guava. If you know guava. Anything of... Yeah, guava. It's the thing of now. If you know anything about 450 North Brewing, they have the Slushy series, which they have a ton of beers, and they have like 3 or 4 of them on in their tap room at all times. They can a bunch of them. This is part of that series, obviously, and it is still currently being consumed, so I'm going to say it's probably fairly available. It's not on in their tap room at the moment, but this is definitely one that is very tasty. I have had a chance to have it. It is, like I said, available in 16-ounce cans. We got one of these. I think you picked it up at Origins. You got this traded to you, and it was absolutely delicious. It is very fruity. The color that it is absolutely belies how fruity it is. It is a very, very maroony burgundy color from all them good fruits and berries.
Them good old fruits.
And it was a really good, delicious beer, and I have liked all of the slushy series that I've had a chance to try, and this one is no different. So we've got Dragon's Breath Slushy.
Cool. From Bayern Brewing in Missoula, Montana, I have Dragon's Breath Dunkelweizen. This is 6% ABV and 18 IBUs. It's a dark wheat beer brewed with Hallertau Perl hops and cold fermented. It's available on draft in 12-ounce bottles.
Yep.
This is regular Dragon's Breath, not slushy.
Yeah, no, and not Dragon's Milk, which is not going to be on this list.
Ooh, spoiler.
Well, I think we've used it on a different list before, and also, there's no milk in this game. It would be weird if there were.
Yes.
From Hilltop Berry Farm and Winery in Nellysford, Virginia, we have Dragon's Breath Mead, which is 14% ABV, and it is a mead. Well, I mean, it's a mead. It's obviously going to be a heavier ABV. They always are.
I was reading ahead to the next
Oh,
sentence.
okay. I thought you were oohing at the 14%. I'm like, that's pretty standard for a mead.
Now, tell us this part.
It is a mead made with hickory smoked hot peppers.
Nice.
It is bottles, and I made this list, so this was obviously going on this list, because if you know anything about my alcohol tastes, I love hot and I love smoked. And this is both of those things, and a mead, which is always a nice, interesting flavor. They have so many different meads at Hilltop Berry Farm and Winery. I'm really excited because they're not terribly far from us. So I would love to go out and try some of them, but this one sounded absolutely amazing. So if you are in the central Virginia area, they've got a location kind of by Crozet, and then they've got one on the lake sort of on the North Carolina border. So if you are in those areas, go check them out.
I will say, this is, I think, the most perfectly named beers and or beverages we've had for a game. The most perfect matches we've had. We
You
usually have,
understand
like,
that's
one or
why I
something.
pick what we put on tap, right?
Yes.
Cool.
Fine. Anyway.
There wasn't a lot for Imhotep the Duel.
Taxman Brewing Company in Bargersville, Indiana has Frozen Assets. It's a milk stout at 6.2% ABV, 42 IBUs, and this is a Belgian chocolate milk stout brewed with roasted barley and chocolate malt and aged on cocoa nibs. It's a winter seasonal that releases in November in 12-ounce cans. So I guess get in line now for it.
No, I don't think that's what I was going for when I wrote that.
Put a note in your phone. Just, put a reminder in your phone. Hey, Siri, in November, remember to get this beer from Taxman called Frozen Assets.
And as we were talking about earlier, the reason why this is applicable is because Dragon Dad is melting this giant chunk of ice, which has these gems in it that his kids are then collecting.
Yeah.
So they are frozen assets.
Thematically applicable.
And Dragon Dad is just being a good dad and giving them to his wonderful children, but saving some of them for himself.
Yeah, it's important to put some away for a future date.
Yeah, I mean, kids aren't great with assets.
No.
Speaking of Dragon Dad, I told you we'd get back to him, and really, I feel like Dragon's Breath it's really a harrowing, sad tale about a single Dragon Dad just trying to raise his up to 4 children.
It's 2 to 4 children.
Yeah, his 2 to 4 children. Because if you look on the inside of the box, Dragon Dad has a single bed. It's only Dragon Dad. He's all by himself.
Well,
Don't know where
really
Dragon
sad.
Mom is. He's just trying to raise these kids. Also, if you look on the inside of the box, Dragon Dad definitely has a decanter and a glass next to his single bed. So, our final beer is from True Vine Brewing Company in Tyler, Texas, and it's Daddy's Juice Box. It is a double IPA that is 8.5% ABV and 25 IBU. It's a double IPA brewed with Simcoe, Citra, and Mosaic hops. It is fruity with low bitterness, and it is available year-round in 12-ounce cans. So, Dragon Dad needs Daddy's Juice Box because he's got to raise these 4 kids, and they keep taking all of his gems. I don't understand these kids.
So that's some kind of an allowance or something?
HABA does not condone this list, by the way.
Oh, geez.
But that's how I feel the tale of Dragon Dad is told in the best Hallmark movie ever.
Well, if you would like more information on these beverages and any other beverages we've talked about in 108 episodes of Draft Mechanic, you can go to draftmechanic.net, click the show notes section because Danielle meticulously makes links on the internet.
Let's say we go back to like episode 30. I don't think
it's
anything
like
before that
17,
has shown
15 or 17. It's one of those. I don't know. We didn't go back that far, but then you don't need to go back that far. Just go to last, you should go to the website. It's good. Yeah.
I feel like you've lost the thread. There will be notes for this one.
I'm going to need you to go to that website, draftmechanic.net or boardgames.beer. I still like to point that out, that I bought a website that is boardgames.beer. That's hilarious. Moving on?
Moving on.
Moving on. All right, we'll take a quick break, and we're coming back with our 6-pack review of Imhotep The Duel. After the fall of Rome, Europe entered into the Dark Ages, but with the rise of feudalism, prosperity returned to the area. In After the Empire, you are a medieval ruler trying to grow and defend your fiefdom.
Players will gather resources, build buildings, enlist troops, and recruit skilled refugees to both increase the value of their city and fortify its defenses against impending invaders.
Having a more valuable fiefdom yields greater rewards, but also brings more invaders looking to get their cut of what's yours. If they manage to sack, you will lose gold, your buildings will be damaged, and your refugees may be injured.
Whoever city is most prosperous at the end of the game is the winner of After the Empire. Check it out on Kickstarter on September 3rd from Grey Fox Games.
Grey Fox Games, quality games, cleverly crafted.
Our 6-pack review this week is Imhotep The Duel, which is a 2019 release from Cosmos. It plays 2 players in about 30 minutes and is designed by Phil Walker Harding with art by Miguel Coimbra, Michaela Kindley, and Klaus Stefan. This is a game of set collection, area control, and I don't know, messing with other people's boats.
So Imhotep The Duel is a 2-player re-implementation of some of the mechanics that you probably know from Imhotep, in that you are sailing boats and you are building different monuments. Mm-hmm. There's a lot different, though, and that's what makes this game so interesting to me, to kind of, to kind of get ahead of myself here. So instead of placing stones like you do in regular Imhotep to place stones onto the boats to deliver them to the different monuments, you're going to be placing workers on a central board. Each player has 4 workers, and there is a central board that is a 3x3 grid, and the 3x3 grid has boats on 2 of the sides of it. So 1 boat per column, 1 boat per row. Each of those boats also has 3 spaces on it, which are different tiles that correspond to the different monuments you have. So you actually have your own monument board instead of one shared central board, and your goal is to get those tiles into your board so that you can score, unsurprisingly, a lot of points. You have an obelisk, you have a temple, you have a pyramid section, and you have a tomb section, and depending on what tiles you get in there, you're going to place them on your different sections, and there's different scoring opportunities for each of the different sections. And there's an A side and a B side, just like in base Imhotep. We'll talk about that when we get into the gameplay stuff later. But the basic way your gameplay is going to work is on your turn you have one of 2 actions you can choose from. You can either place a worker out onto that 3x3 grid, or you can choose to sail a boat if that column has 2 or 3 workers in it already. Once it has enough workers in there, you can sail that boat off and then distribute the tokens out to the players. The way the distribution works out is directly related to the way that the workers in that particular row or column are. So there's 3 spaces on the boat, and whichever worker is the front of that particular column will get the front tile on there. The second player will get the second tile, and then if there is a third meeple in that row or column, they will get the third tile. You'll only get the third tile if that row is completely full, regardless of where the other 2 meeples are. Like if I had somebody in the column in space 1 and in space 3, but there's nothing in space 2, only the first 2 tiles would come out still. So there's kind of a little push your luck almost, in that you have to get all 3 spots filled if you really want that third spot. So maybe you want the second tile on that boat, you put your meeple in the second player space, or in the second row or column space there. Other player goes in the third space, and you're like, oh, well, I don't want that first one, I'm going to put my meeple over here, and then they send it off, and you kind of get hosed because you get the first tile instead of the second tile. So you got to really kind of be aware of what your opponent wants so that you're getting the right spots on the boat, because otherwise you won't get the tiles you want, so on and so forth. There is actually a third action, but now that you know about the tiles, I can kind of bring this one in here. Some of the tiles you get are these blue action tiles that kind of are like the action cards you get in base Imhotep, but instead of taking an action of placing a worker or sailing a boat, you can use one of your action tiles, and they basically allow you to manipulate your workers or the tiles in different ways. There's ones that allows you to place 2 to 3 meeples, or maybe you're placing a worker and then sailing a boat immediately. There's ones that allow you to just take a tile directly off of a boat and then replace it from the supply, so on and so forth. Some interesting things there that you got to really just use the strategy of when you're going to obviously use those tiles to most effect. The game will continue until all but the last boat has sailed. You're obviously refilling from the supply a whole bunch of times to make this happen. And there are exactly the number of pieces for you to fill out like each of the pyramids and every space in the tomb, which is kind of interesting as well. So you almost have perfect knowledge about what tiles are going to be in the game, except for a set of 3 tiles you set aside at the beginning that are the ones that you replenish if somebody uses the take a tile action. But beyond the strategy of the game itself, a lot of the then strategy comes into the different monument boards that you have in front of you. The base setup, for example, The obelisk, you get 1 point per tile, and then 5 if you have, or 5 or 6 if you have the most. There's the temple that is just straight up. You get the tiles with the little red circles on them. You put them face down. You pretend that they're pepperoni, and then you get a point per pepperoni at the end of the game. There's the pyramids, where you score points for however many tiles you have in your pyramids. There's 2 different pyramids, and there's 6 tiles total each in the game. And if you manage to get all 6 of one color, you get a huge amount of points. And then the tomb at the very end on the A side rewards you for connected sets of tiles. They're numbered 1 through 12, I believe. And if you have a set of 5, for example, you score a whole bunch of points. But if you have multiple sets, you score points for all of them. The interesting side is, again, on the B side of that, you have a bunch of different scoring opportunities that are honestly a lot meaner and a lot more interactive. For example, the obelisk, instead of being point per tile, is whoever gets to 5 first gets 12 points. On the temple, you're trying to collect sets of each different number of icons. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4 pepperoni tiles. It's kind of just how they look. They look like pepperonis on cheese. It's much easier to call it that way. And if you have sets of, 1, 2, 3, and 4, you get a bunch of points there. The pyramid, you only score the lesser of your 2 pyramids. And if you have a pyramid with no tiles, you actually get negative points off of that one. And then in the tomb, you actually get 4 points per set, regardless of the size of the set. So you're encouraged to get like just 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, stuff that isn't connecting, because then you maximize the points there. It's obviously up to you how you want to play. The A side is more of kind of a solitaire level. The B side is way more interactive. But this game, this says it plays in 30 minutes. I honestly feel like we played most of our games in 15 minutes, especially once we got into the feel of the way it mechanically works. But it is entirely up to you how much you want to fight on Imhotep The Duel. Oh, and whoever has the most points at the end wins.
Obviously.
Did I mention that? Yeah, so Danielle, what were your initial thoughts of this when I told you I had a chance to play it and I was really excited about it? Because I know you enjoy Imhotep some, yeah?
I do enjoy Imhotep, and I didn't really feel the need for a new Imhotep. But I think this really did a good job of translating what is a multiplayer game into a 2-player game. It has a lot of the same mechanics that I liked from the base game. It has those different monuments that they're building, those different types of scoring opportunities. The fact that you can absolutely just destroy somebody's plan by sending a boat that they were hoping to be able to put another meeple on, or putting your meeple into the space that they absolutely needed the tile of. There is definitely that same level of player interaction, even on what you called the sort of solo play side, the A side. That being said, I really like that it has changed the game, so it is much more suitable for 2 players. You can play regular Imhotep with 2 people, it's just not good. And I really like the way this played with 2. It was tailored really nicely.
I'm really glad to hear you say that, because I had a chance to play this with Bert back at one of our game nights a few months ago. He just happened to be over in Germany around the time it was released, brought it back, and I got a chance to play it. I'm just like, oh wow, this really does feel like Imhotep, but a completely different game, or at least a different enough game to make it interesting. You're collecting tiles, you're putting them on the different monuments, but instead of putting stones out into a center board, you're trying to get stuff for yourself, and that worker placement mechanic really just changed the way that the game felt to me.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree so much with that. It felt very much like Imhotep to me. I didn't feel like it was a dramatically different game. While you did have that different placement mechanic that allowed you to, instead of placing your stones onto the boat, place people into the harbor. And there was sort of an added strategy, because when a boat sails or unloads or whatever it technically is called, you remove the meeples so that you can actually kick somebody out of a spot, which is not something you can do in regular Imhotep. I really did feel like this was definitely Imhotep. This was not something that took those mechanics and made a new game. This was just taking that game and making it a game for 2 people.
I think you hit on it and you kind of circled around it there. I love the way that the placement mechanic works, in that you can sail a boat just to get rid of somebody else that's going for, something on the other row or column. And that was something that I learned more and more about as I continue to play this game. I was playing it for a 6-pack review. I think this is a perfect game to play for a 6-pack review, because I definitely felt my strategies changing every single time I'm playing the game, as I'm learning more and more about, okay, well, I need to really be aware of when to sail this boat to give somebody else something, rather than just, focusing just on my stuff. This is a very interactive 2-player game in that way, to me.
At the same time, I definitely had moments where I just wanted too many things from single meeples. Like, I put a meeple in a place that was really good in one direction, and it was also good for me in the other direction.
Yes.
But you have to make a choice. Which of those two things do you want? And can you remove your meeple and get another one back in there in time to get the other one if you want them both? Because you're only going to be able to get ever one tile from every meeple placement. You're not going to be able to get them both.
As much as you want to. Do you feel like you had the opportunity to force me into sailing a boat that you wanted sailed very often?
Yeah, I mean, there are only 4 meeples in each color, so there's always going to be a space that's left empty where somebody's going to have to sail a boat at a point. Like, you can definitely use all your meeples, and I think every game we played, the first group, we both put out all of our meeples before anybody sailed a boat, because you just wanted to sort of see where you were going to be able to get points and what you were going to start going for. There were definitely times I was like, okay, well, I have to sail a boat. I don't have a meeple, or I do have a meeple, but I want to sail a boat because you don't have anything out. There were, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Both situations were the case.
Okay. And we had kind of circled around it a lot before. So this has an A side and a B side of the different monument boards. And we played, obviously, a bunch of the A sides to get familiar with it. But when we switch over to the B sides, it felt like a very, very different kind of interaction at that point. It felt way more, not antagonistic, but interactive, I guess. Really more focused on denying you than building just for myself. What do you think?
Yeah, this game, for me, shines on the B-sides. The A-sides are fine, and it does have a lot of that feel of your standard Imhotep A-sides. But I feel like the B-sides are really important because you, need to be able to get a piece of each of the different monuments. Because if you're giving up points anywhere, you're going to be at a huge disadvantage, especially on those pyramids, because you lose points if you don't have any of the stones on whichever of your lesser pyramids is the one that's scoring. But also in that B-side, you had more of an opportunity to force somebody into taking something that they absolutely could not use. On the A-side, like the temple, for example, you get points for every pepperoni that you have in your temple. On the B-side, you're looking to collect sets of different things. So, if I've got a 1, a 3, and a 4, I really want that 2. I don't really want that 1. Like, it's going to give me maybe 1 additional point because you can score additional sets. But what I want is the 2. I don't want you to give me that 1. That's not really useful to me. It's not worth that meeple placement and having to place another one to get something I do want. At the same time, at the tomb, like, you're getting points for different groups on the tomb. So if I've already got 7, I do not want 6 or 8. That is a waste to me.
That is
a
big step back.
Yeah, I'm already getting those 4 points for the 7. I don't want the 6 and the 8. I'm going to essentially have the amount of points I'm getting per meeple. And if you can force somebody into taking something, you sell a boat maybe, and suddenly instead of being the 3rd person in a row, they're the 2nd person in a row, and that 2nd person is getting a tomb that they don't need, like, that feels really good. It feels like I made a smart and intelligent play because I've now given you something that's essentially worthless to you.
Yeah, or a detraction. If you imagine if you have the 6 and the 8 and then somebody forces a 7 on you.
Yeah.
That is just straight up negative 4 points.
At that point, yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, the only thing I'm kind of bummed about is that there's only an A and a B side. In base Imhotep, I feel like, was there an A, B, C, and D? I feel like we had 4 sets. Or maybe that was just with the expansion.
I think that might be with the expansion.
But this is the kind of game that I would love to have just a small expansion pack. Just give me more monument boards.
Don't worry, they want your money.
Oh, I'm sure they do. And I am totally down for it when it does happen, because I feel like there's a lot of different things you can do with this. And I will say, I honestly prefer this to Imhotep. I really enjoyed playing this, and I really like how directly confrontational it is, especially on that B-side. I know that if we continue to play the B-side, you're going to start just annihilating me because I'm very bad at judging those kinds of 2-player options. But I just want to play it and lose a lot.
I'm not sure I like it better than Imhotep. I think Imhotep is more sort of raucous fun to me.
Okay.
We don't call Imhotep in our group. We call it Expletive Your Boat. And that very much is the feeling of when we play Imhotep. It's just like, I'm throwing my stones on this boat. I really want to get this, but you sailed the boat to the complete wrong place. That's not what I wanted. Oh, this is crazy. And it's really an up-tempo game for us.
Yeah.
Where I feel like Imhotep The Duel is, like many two-player strategy games, a much more sedate experience because you're making sure that you are making the correct placement. It's not about like, oh, you know, you want to make a big stink because somebody sailed the wrong boat. Like, you are sitting there and you're, okay, what can I do with this situation? How can I turn this in my favor? It's a much more measured game. Mm-hmm. And I like them both, but I like them both for different experiences. It's like I was saying earlier, you know, there are certain times where you want that fun, crazy, wild game, and there are certain times where you want to sit there and figure out exactly what you're going to do and how it's going to work out for you. And these games fit those different niches for me.
So a few little bits to wrap up, because we're kind of nearing the end of this review. It's a quick review for a quick playing game. Art and components, they're just fine. And I feel like Cosmos just kind of has a consistency to their stuff. One thing I will say, the tiles are kind of fiddly, and if you're in low light, you got to really squint to read the action tiles until you get a feel for what they are.
The weight on the font is very thin.
Yeah, and the tiles are maybe an inch square. I think that's being generous.
Yeah, they're probably closer to like 3/4 of an inch at most, and they do occasionally get a little difficult to fit onto the boats and flip over and make sure they're there.
But that's more of a learn how to use your fingers problem than anything else, I guess.
No, I mean, there is certainly something to be said for making your components so that they're easily manipulated, but if that's my biggest complaint about this game, there are many games that are worse.
Yeah. And I do want to speak to the value of this. So I picked this up at Gen Con. It's got like a $20 MSRP, which means you can get this for like 15-ish if you know where you're going. It was $17 at their booth, and I legit almost bought 2 copies of it because I know Tamara wanted it real bad. Oh. And like, I just like, it's such a no-brainer. Like, this would be a game that I would probably get as a gift to people who are looking for 2-player games and they, you know, weren't super deep into looking for stuff. This is the like perfect value game for me to give somebody in that instance, for example.
Frankly, even if they were deep into games, like, There is the obvious choice for a 2-player small box game that I think you and I would both pick.
Lost Cities?
Patchwork.
Oh, Patchwork, yeah.
But beyond that, this would be a fine choice. Like, if either they already had Patchwork or that's not the style of game that they are into playing, this would be a really good next choice, I think, for anybody. So
let's wrap it up with a little bit of final thoughts. You want to sum it up in a little bit for us?
Yeah, this did a thing that I didn't know I needed something to do, which was take Imhotep, which was a fun sort of raucous game for us, and make it into a really nice controlled 2-player experience in a way that didn't make it feel less fun. I really enjoyed this, and I'm looking forward to playing it again.
Cool. For my final thoughts, I'll just say Imhotep The Duel is the right way to do a 2-player version of a game. Change it just enough that it's fresh and interesting, but keep enough of the game the same or at least feel similar so that you feel comfortable in it. And I will say, like I said there, that price point is so freaking phenomenal that this
doesn't hurt.
One of the things this is an upper echelon 2-player box game for me right now. Like, this will be one of the 2-player games that I immediately recommend to people, especially if they, you know, have some other games that we would generally talk about in this space. Yeah, Imhotep The Duel, super thumb up for me. I love it.
Cool.
Well, time to take a quick little break, and then Danielle, you're going to start off an epic series, from what I understand, correct?
It's like a prequel.
Oh, yeah, it's the beginning of it. Yeah, prequel memes or something. I don't know. Break. Want a second opinion on some of the games we talked about on this episode? Check out some other great content creators at punchboardmedia.com. Beer. I've heard so much about it, but I don't know anything about it. Specifically, I don't know what makes the hop part. Look, I'm trying to set you up. Let me serve you the ball. Wham, bam, here it is. Okay. Tell me about hops.
Let me set myself up a little better than that.
I'm bad.
I had asked I believe it was in the Board Game Geek Guild that I had asked a couple of weeks ago if they would be interested in a series about different varietals of hops. And that would include sort of an overarching introductory segment, but also as I was getting ready for that, I was thinking about hop cultivation, because it is definitely something that is very different than growing a lot of different types of plants. And if you can't grow the hops, then you can't use the hops to brew beer, because you need to grow things before you can use them. So I wanted to do sort of like I said, a little bit of a prequel segment about hop cultivation, so that if you are interested in growing your own hops for your home brew beer, or I don't know, maybe to like sell at a farmer's market or something, this is how you do it. Hops are grown on vines, obviously. If you've ever seen hops growing, then you've seen them. They're grown on vines. Well, technically they're grown on vines, That's vines, but with a B, which are types of vines where the shoots themselves are actually responsible for the climbing action, not like separate tendrils. If you see a vine or like ivy or something like that, it has different tendrils which are responsible for grabbing onto things and climbing. In a vine, the shoot itself is what actually leads to that climbing action. Hops are a dioecious plant, which means that they have male and female varieties. If you are going to try and grow hops, you only want the female plants because those are the ones that produce the cones and flowers that you're going to be using to create your hops. Hop vines are perennial plants, which means that once you plant a rhizome, it can grow for, I think it's set up to 25 to 50 years if you treat it nicely and tend it appropriately. They are not annual, so you don't have to plant them every year. They can be grown in most moderate climates as long as they are planted in a spot that receives about 6 to 8 hours of sunlight a day, but they really grow best between the 35th and 55th parallels, which is why you get them a lot in sort of the upper Midwest United States, all across that band of Europe that's between 35 and 55, you get nice hop growing, and in the southern hemisphere, New Zealand is in that 35 to 55th parallel zone. So these are the regions that are best for growing hops. The vines can grow up to 25 feet in a single season, which is why you see like mammoth hop vines. If you've ever seen a picture of a hop farm, they can grow very, very tall. And you get multiple vines that will come off a single rhizome. Each vine can produce between 1/2 pound and 2 pounds of dried hop flowers, and that's the part you're going to want if you're making the beer. The flowers, once they're dried out, are going to be what you're adding in either during your flavoring or at the end if you're going to be dry hopping at the end. Because of the cool climbing shoots on a hop vine, you're going to need twine for them to grow up or a trellis.
Twines for your vines?
Yeah, hop
Nice.
twines for your hop vines.
Hop tines for your hop twine. I'm done.
And like I said, they will have that growing action where they will grow up the vine. Rhizomes should be planted in loosened soil with a pH of between 6 and 7.5, but surprisingly, at least to me, which is not difficult because I cannot grow anything I will kill a plant by looking at it. I have no gardening ability in me. So to me, it was very surprising that you're not actually going to plant the rhizome deeply in the ground. You're going to make a mound of loosened soil and then plant them either at ground level or up to 2 inches below ground level, and that's so that they can get enough water. It's also really important that the soil has nice drainage because otherwise they are just going to get waterlogged and the root structure is going to be damaged. If you are planting more than one varietal of hop, it is important to leave about 5 feet of space between the different varietals at least. Otherwise, the roots are going to grow together and you are going to have problems with your plantings and also with your hop production. Make sure to keep the area free of weeds, obviously. I hear that's a thing that's good for plants. And you are going to top the planted rhizomes with mulch to help the soil stay free of the weeds. You should fertilize it when they first sprout and also about 3 weeks later. The shoots will need to be trained to grow around the trellis or the hop twine, but after you train them for a couple of days, they will naturally grow clockwise around that. And I don't know why it is clockwise, but everywhere that I was looking at said that they will grow clockwise around your hop twine. So that's a cool thing that nature does. The rhizomes can produce, like I said, more than one shoot, but you should aim for at most 2 to 3 from each rhizome in a single season because otherwise you're going to be spreading the resources and the space for each of the plants too thin and they won't be able to support all of them. They said the first year you're probably not going to get as strong a yield because the root systems will be developing and it'll be trying to establish itself in the ground, but in following years you're going to want to prune back your different vines that are coming off of the single rhizome, so you have at most 2 to 3. You can tell how a hop is ripened by either touch. When you feel it, it should feel light and dry and spring back when you squeeze it. You can also smell it. It should have a pungent smell somewhere between cut grass and onion. Or you can listen to it.
Wait, what?
Yeah, the quote on this one was, you can roll the hop next to your ear, and if it makes a cricket sound, then they're also ready to harvest. I'm going to stick to saying you should probably smell and squeeze them.
Yeah, I'm going to call nah on that one.
And if at any point the lupulin in your hops turns sort of orange and rancid, you waited too long. And I can't help you with that. You just waited too long. Don't do it again the next time.
Hey, y'all's done bad.
I mean, there is something to be said for the fact that oftentimes a full vine won't be ready at the same time. So you'll, like almost any garden thing, you're going to pick whatever is ripe, and then you'll come back another time and you'll pick another little bit of it. When you decided that your hops are ripe to harvest, you need to lower the bind. A lot of times when they have these set up, and I know you saw these when you went to the Pacific Northwest, they have it so it's sort of on a pulley, and when they want to pick some of the hops, they let the slack out of the trellis that they've set up, and they'll pick off the hops that are ready and ripe to be harvested, and then they'll pull the trellis back up so that the other ones can continue growing. Once you have the hops picked off of the vine, you've twisted them off the little vine, and you're ready to go and use them. You can either use them right away. Fresh hops can be used to brew beer. But if you're not going to use them right away, you can dry them out. You do this by laying them either in a single layer, not in the sun, or you can put them in the oven as long as the temperature doesn't exceed 140 degrees Fahrenheit. The inner stem will become brittle, and that's when you know that they are dried out. They should be, I think it's at 8 to 10% water at that point. And you're going to vacuum seal them and store them in the freezer until you are ready to use them. So if you are looking to cultivate some hops, there are some tips that I hope that you can use as we go forward to think about either if you're growing hops or if you're just thinking about what goes into the production of the hops we're going to be talking about in upcoming episodes.
And now, I know.
Yep.
I wonder if my dad is going to listen to this one.
No.
He says he's been listening occasionally, and he did say he wanted to grow hops. Maybe this will encourage him. Dad, grow hops. You can do it.
I imagine he'd be better at it than I.
All right. Well, I'm sure you're going to put a little bit of info about all that stuff in the show notes.
I will certainly put links to the places where I received this info.
Ooh, links. Links to click. You can click them at draftmechanic.net. Final word for this episode. The final round does not exist in this particular episode, but I do have the final round topic for next episode. I did post it in the Slack while we were recording here. Pretty simple. I have been struggling with a lot of board game burnout recently, and I want to hear from some people in our Slack. How do you deal with board game burnout? Do you need to go back to an old standby, try something new, or take a break altogether? I'm interested to hear what kind of remedies and things people need to do when they just kind of get tired of learning new games all the time.
I play 80 hours of Fire Emblem.
You do. I mean, you're probably a little more than 80 hours at this point.
I was giving myself a little bit of credit.
At some point, I'll have my Nintendo Switch back.
Nope.
200 hours from now. But yeah, if you're interested, hop into our Slack channel. We have a Slack channel you can get in for free, draftmechanic.net/Slack. I'm going to also post this one in the Guild 2470, because we do that as well, and it also works out for everybody. But I guess just to kind of wrap it up, thank you all so much for listening to this particular episode of Draft Mechanic and any other episodes you've listened to in the past or will in the future. If you want to get in touch with us, draftmechanic.net is, of course, your one-stop shop for all your Draft Mechanic needs. You can go to all your social medias, as long as they are Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and find us at Draft Mechanic. If you want, you can buy a Draft Mechanic t-shirt. We have four styles available now. We've got the classic logo, we've got the Carcassonne, we've got the live studio cat, and the new thematic Euros, which is just fabulous, and I freaking love that art so much. So hit those up at draftmechanic.net as well, and you can click the banner to go to that place.
As you just said a minute ago, we have a Board Game Geek Guild. That is guild number 2470, so you can share your thoughts there. If you happen to be in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, we do twice monthly meetups. Our next one is going to be on Thursday, September 5th at Good Road Cider Works.
Mm-hmm. Draft Mechanic is sponsored by Gray Fox Games. You can visit grayfoxgames.com and sign up for their newsletter for the latest. Gray Fox Games, quality games, cleverly crafted. And don't forget, After the Empire is coming to Kickstarter September 3rd, relaunching with some more content on the Kickstarter page. They're super excited. I'm super excited. I like the game a lot, and y'all should check it out.
As always, I would like to remind our listeners to please game responsibly and tell them that I'll see them back here in 2 weeks for another round.
Sounds like a plan. Good night, everybody.
Night.
Draft Mechanic episode 108 was recorded on Sunday, August 25th, 2019 in front of a live and very mobile studio cat.
Beauty is in your eyes, you are the beholder. You render me stricken. Do not go gently into that gutter line.
Hey, Board Gamers, BJ from Board Game Gumbo here, back with more Louisiana flavor. Ton chien. We love talking board games. That's why we started up Gumbo Live, the #1 Facebook live talk show dedicated to board gaming. Each week, we interview guests from your hobby, publishers, designers, content creators, and you get to ask them whatever you like. It's a live show. So join us at Board Game Gumbo on Facebook every Tuesday night at 8:30 p.m. Central for another episode of Gumbo Live. And until next time, laissez le bon temps rouler.
Punchboard Media, where we all
Bring something
to the table.
pull up a chair
At punchboardmedia.com.